Welcome back to the WRPF podcast, guys. I'm your host, Alex Uslar, episode 34. We got the man, Chad Penson, on here. All right. Chad, if you guys don't know who Chad is, you look on Open Powerlifting. You already know on these episodes, I love to have Open Powerlifting history. I'm a big nerd with the numbers and shit like that. I know a lot of you guys like that too. He's up there, the top three, baby. 650 dots. The number four, way behind that, right? Chad came in, he pushed Zahir, which, by the way, I don't know about you, dog, but I'm excited to see that fucking Zahir comeback. That's wild, bro.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
our
I'm watching it.
generation, we grew up just watching those videos and shit. And I know half the people who listen to this podcast, half the kids on Instagram have no fucking idea, but that's nuts. You pushed him down to number four, right? It was legendary motherfucker. Top three, all right. All-time world record squat. Been competing since 2012. Welcome to the show, bro.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Hell yeah, man. So you just competed this past weekend. You just competed at the American Pro about 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. You've competed a lot over the last year since you've climbed the ranks, hit your all-time world records. But like everyone listening to this show knows, I like to take it back. Let's start from the beginning before we talk about present day and everything that goes with present day. So what were you doing? What was Chad Penson doing before powerlifting, and how did he find powerlifting?
Ooh, that's a pretty easy answer. Actually, I was wrestling in college. That I dropped out. But I was trying to find like another outlet to kind of, you do a sport for like 6 years. You kind of like you need an outlet or something to do to kind of fuel that competitive nature. I was like, I was gonna get big. I didn't really grow much, but that goal didn't really come to fruition until later. But I found powerlifting at a gym while I was in tech school in the Air Force in 2011. And one of the guys there was like, "Hey, we got to meet today. You want to just drop in?" And I didn't know what the hell it was, but I kind of fell in love with it ever since. I sucked, but I kind of just kept going. And 10, 12 years later, here I am.
Well, so I'm guessing that first meet that you talked about, that was just like a pop-up. That's not an open powerlifting. First meet we got for you on open powerlifting 2012. But leading up to that first meet, we'll talk about that first meet in a second and kind of getting bit by the bug of powerlifting. You find that gym. But before that, when you were wrestling, what weight class were you wrestling at? And were you lifting while wrestling, or it was really just like conditioning work and wrestling?
I did a. I tried to lift. Well, I didn't try to lift. I lifted a lot. I was lifting probably since I was like 9. I kind of used to like used to put weights on like a broomstick. Me and my cousin used to lift. I used to live in Mississippi. We used to lift on our porch with a broomstick with the weights in the middle. We pump it. Uh, we just loved working out, and that was kind of a thing. I was already pretty strong, like for my age and my size. Um, so when I got to high school and I started wrestling, I was uh, I was really small, probably 100 pounds, 103 pounds, which was the first weight class I wrestled at, and I was a lot stronger than pretty much anybody my size, even like a few weight classes up. And I didn't. My coach didn't let me lift because I was starting to gain weight really easy. So I pretty much did like mostly cardio stuff, like in season, off season. I would go in there and I pumped some iron pretty hard. And I went from 103 freshman year to 119. So I went up 2 weight classes my sophomore year, 125. Then when I graduated, I was a 135 pounder. Um, I went from just being a muscle head to actually honing my technique and actually using my strength to my advantage a little bit better over the years, obviously. But yeah, I always loved lifting weights, but I couldn't really devote like real passion to it till after the wrestling phase was over because I was like now I put on mass pretty easy. So kind of had to do it on the back end a little bit, not too crazy with it.
Yeah, even in the like that high school history and going up those different classes, like you hear those numbers, those seem so small and you were very light, but the fact you were able to
Yeah.
make those jumps and then like kind of build that mass while keeping a small frame for sure carried over to you when you started powerlifting. So first meet on open powerlifting history was 2012 Raw Nationals, but you had to have done something before that, right?
Uh, no, so well, I did that beat I told you about when I was in tech school, and it was I think it was APF, and I'm not sure how I got into it. All I had was shorts and a t-shirt, but so that was the only meet I'd actually done on record, but the record's never really updated, so that's gone. I don't even remember my numbers, but it was like 300, probably 315 squat and deadlift. I never actually deadlifted before to that meet, and I think I benched like 250 or 260, something along those lines. But I don't think I don't think the qualifications were there for USAPL back in the day. The meet was it was a far cry from what nationals are now, but it was
Of course.
one of the first few RNATs that they had. It was in Killeen, Texas, and it was my first time seeing Jen Thompson and Kim Walford lift, and it was pretty humbling. I was a 165 pounder to see Jen bench like 303, and I think I benched 314 that day, and I was just it hit me in the chest a little bit, but yeah, that was my lead up. I drove all the way to Killeen from New Mexico. I trained pretty much from that first meet in 2011, kind of obsessively. I just scoured the forums on like bodybuilding.com. So you remember those days before Instagram was really big. That was like knowledge source. It was on like T Nation and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I figured out my training a little bit and kind of focused on actually getting strong versus just trying to get big for a change.
So take me through, because I love to hear what you just said, like that, the T Nation, the bodybuilding.com, those were the early resources. You could find some different program templates, like everyone and their mother ran 531 or something at one point, right?
Yeah.
So what did your training look like leading up to that first meet? Because although it's like you look at it and you're like, oh, those numbers compared to now, but at that time for 165 pounds, 2012, like if you would have just done a local level meet, people be like, damn, this guy's almost squatting, 400. He's benching over 300, like almost double body weight. That's pretty impressive for your first time around. You obviously had all that history, tons of training behind you, but do you feel like you were like you were structured leading into that meet, or it wasn't till after that where you started really gaining like your proper footing in powerlifting?
Really kind of like I want to say like pre 2015. My training was it wasn't as like structured as it is like now and mapped out. Back then it was real the simple stuff like 5x5s and really simple linear progression. Like I do 5x5 at 5 pounds on like bench, and then I had like 10, 15,000 squat. And I mean, it really milked those newbie gains, for a while. And I mean, I kept it simple. My whole first like probably 5, 6 years of doing this, I lifted in really shitty equipment and on base gyms. So it was just straight bar weight and hex plates for deadlifts. And it was awful, but the training was pretty, like I said, it was real simple, just pretty much 5x5s. I hammered the hell out of accessories. Like I used to beat my triceps to death. I used to do a lot of pull-ups. I used to watch all the guys doing like calisthenics and stuff like that, the flag poles. I thought that stuff was cool. Trying to keep a semblance of athleticism. Didn't really care about aesthetics too much. I was pretty lean back then, like I said, only 165 pounds, but I was like maybe 170. So, but yeah, I mean, it was back 2012, 2013. Me was very, very simple training. I used to throw my logs up on my training logs on bodybuilding.com. I can't remember my username, but they're probably still there if the forums are even still there. But yeah.
So take me through those kind of first 4 years before we get into like Boss of Bosses and that era, right? So you go 2012, 2013, you compete a couple times. Then you have a pretty big gap between 2013, 2016. So you're in the military at that time. Kind of take me through that, what your training looked like. Because then after that, 2016, we start hitting, and that's where it's competing, right?
Yeah. So let's see. 2012, 2013. I was in New Mexico. So I spent pretty much all my time in the desert. There weren't a lot of meets there. So like USAPL wasn't nearby. So like I said, I had to take, if I wanted to go somewhere for like USAPL meets or something like that, I had to take like a lot of leave and stuff like that and travel. And back in the day, I was an E3, E4. And if you look at the military pay chart from 2012, without housing and all that, I'm making like $600-700 every 2 weeks. So obviously, I'm not booking hotels and flights just to go on a little trip, a hobby trip, because we weren't getting paid for powerlifting like even remotely close to what we are now. So picking meets was strictly hobbyist level, and I did a lot of 100% raw, small drug tested federation was kind of where I got my foothold in powerlifting for the most part while I was in New Mexico. And I was training for I think their nationals is I think it's like a regional tournament where they take all the results from regionals and that's how they get their national champion to keep everybody from traveling to one spot. And I was training for that. And I think I was running Smolov, and
Yeah.
it was like the second day of running Smolov, and I tweaked my back so hard on like the second rep of a squat. It wasn't anything crazy because like I did some research and I knew Smolov was like super intense. I was like, I'm gonna knock off a full 10% of my max because squat was my weakest lift at the time. And that's probably gonna shock people, but like squats were just not moving. It took me forever to break like the 402 barrier on squats. And so I was like, I'm gonna hit this shit and I'm gonna hit 500. I think at the time 165 record was like 501 or something. Like it was unheard of for 165 to be squatting more than 500 back in those days. So like I was like, I can do this. It's only 100 pounds away or so. So I'm like, I'm gonna hit Smolov and I should be fine. Well, I tweaked my back so bad. I think it was 2013. That's where you see that gap. I ended up having to go to the hospital. They couldn't really find anything when they finally decided to give me an MRI, but I've since had sciatica so bad that it would flare up just from picking up like a t-shirt, even now. But I've learned to manage it a lot better. But like I wasn't walking for like normally for like 2 or 3 weeks, and I had to I just did upper body for that 2 year gap you see. So had to pull out of that meet, and I thought I was done powerlifting, honestly, until I think late 2014 or 2015. There was a like mock meet at my base, and I squatted 425, and I hadn't done any squats in like pretty much that whole time because I was scared. You know, what I'm saying like the pain I had from that injury was probably one of the worst. Like I would roll over in bed at night and wake up screaming. So when I hit that 424 squat, 425 squat, I was like, I can probably come back and do this again. So I started training a little bit, took my time, and I actually had a deployment come up. I think at the end of 2014 to 2015, somewhere along that time. I went out to I got deployed to Africa for 6 months, and that entire time I just focused on squatting. But I had to change my deadlift from conventional to sumo because conventional was too much stress on my back still at the time. And yeah, by the time I came back, I think I was squatting almost 600. I think I ended up leaving there squatting like 550 or 560, and I think I went up to 181 shortly after I came back from like my first meet, which I think I didn't do a meet till 20. Then I came back and did that same 100% raw regionals. I did like I think two or three meets. I did that.
Summer of 2016, right? Did a little bit there. Then again,
Yeah,
summer of 2016 with that same federation. Then December of 20. No, then you wait till December 2017 is then when you start going to USPA and doing some other federations, right?
yeah. I went to Korea and I put in a request to get PCS to California because I was watching all the like powerlifting was really starting to blow up, and
Yeah.
everything was happening in California. I was like, if I really want to do this like on a big scale, like I had been watching like USAPL, like IPF, and I was seeing like John Hack and Brett Gibbs, and they had their big battle, and I was like, and at the time I was like, I want to beat Brett Gibbs, but then I saw John beat Brett, and I was like, well, if that guy, I want to go for the top dog, and that kind of fueled my fire because like at the time, like it wasn't like and I like this. I set unrealistic expectations to a degree at the time, but like if I look back now, it was actually realistic. I just didn't know it at the time that I could actually achieve the goals I set. And I was like, well, if I want to beat the best, I need to go train and compete with the best. And at the time, that was like the current U.S. Open and all these other big meets, Boston. I was like, I have to get in that area. I need to train with these monsters and get to that level. So when I got my orders to California, I was like, all right, we got work to do. And I think by the time I left Korea, I was squatting over 600. I deadlifted over 7, and I was benching over 5. I was like, I got some potential. So
then you hit USPA, you hit USPA National. So take me through this period, because this is where I first saw you competing, right? Because this is where it starts snowballing pretty quickly. You went from this kind of federation that only if you're in that area you know about. You find USPA within your first year back. You're here in California. You compete at nationals for USPA, right? In Vegas, like it always was. And then
yeah.
the next month after nationals, you compete at Boss of Bosses 5. So
Yeah.
how did that happen? How did that happen? Because you had to know Dan Green, you had to get noticed by Dan Green. How did that unfold?
Okay, it's not a funny story, but to me it was like a shot in the dark. But I just kind of I just threw the ball up to see what happened. So after I competed at nationals, I actually had I think I tweaked my groin a little bit on a squat. So I tried to dunk it, and they called me for depth for some reason. I posted that squat before, and everybody was like, they're blind," but whatever. I'm not getting into that. But so I tweaked my groin, but at the time I had also just fired my coach, I think, after that, and kind of took training in my own hands. But I really just didn't squat from that 5 weeks until Boss of Bosses because I had strained my groin, like I said. But I was like, I need to get a 600-pound squat because I had to say I got it on paper, but I did it in Korea. So to get to Boss of Bosses, I saw that Dan had posted it, and I was like, I saw his email in the I think in his Instagram page, and I just shot him my numbers via email, and I was like, hey, I kind of kissed the ass a little bit. I'm sharing the email. I was like, hey man, I really want to do the meet. These are my numbers, and I would really like a shot. And because I don't think at the time like I was on anybody's radar, especially looking at I don't think people were really looking at like USPA Nats is like a like this is where your cream of the crops usually competing at even then. They were all going to like Kern. They were already on the radar for Boston. They were legends that were already competing there, so they didn't have to do nationals or anything else. So I just shot the shot, and he actually emailed me back. Well, obviously he emailed me back, and it was like, yeah, we love to have you. So I was like, okay, bet this is it. So I pretty much just kind of focused on recovering the leg. I thought about my numbers from nationals and kind of was like, okay, I can probably make some better attempts here and there, which is kind of where I get my idea that compete back to back meets isn't terrible as long as you can stay peak, because you can make smarter attempt selections, and that's always been my philosophy. As long as you walk out of there without being jacked up, you can probably make an impact on the next meet just playing it smart. And I think I did pretty good. I can't remember exactly what how that meet played out, but I think
Boss of Bosses, you went 9 for 9.
I did really good there.
The USPA meets, because they use the different software in open powerlifting. It's so annoying. They don't show all the attempts. They only show whatever your successful one was. So you don't know if it's a fucking 3 for 9 or whatever it is. But it's funny because that year, 2018, where you competed at that nationals and you said your squat was bullshit. It's like that was the year of the infamous Kern US Open, just 4 months before it, right? The last year that the Kern was USPA before it became WRPF, where it was like everything was red. So USPA kind of had that role then when you went into nationals, because I might have been at nationals that year. I'm not sure, because I'd been at USPA nationals the years prior. And I remember I was like, what the hell, man? Like, come on. You see these old lifters, squatted pretty much as deep as they can. It's 3 reds even from the front. It was like a US Open all over again. But so you hit that national champs, go to Boss of Bosses 5, fucking just is 5 weeks later, and you turn it around and have a 9 for 9 day. So it definitely makes sense with what you said of the smarter attempt selection, learning from whatever might have happened, hiccups from the previous meet, and how you can kind of game plan things accordingly, right?
Yeah.
So that meet, Boss Bosses 5, still at 181. You do another meet later in 2018, but then boom, big breakout happens early 2019 with the Kern, right? I remember that was one of the first times that I actually met you, because I was there with DeRuin, right? And you guys were both competing.
Yeah.
And DeRuin, I think you guys were both, because he missed 165. You guys were both 181 at that meet, and you had yourself a hell of a fucking day. I don't remember where you ended up placing overall, but a 591 dots, 40 dots points from your previous meet after mainly competing in raw, right? But you threw on the wraps and had a hell of a day.
Yeah, that was my second meet in wrap. I signed up for it once I learned I qualified. Signed up. I signed up for another meet in wraps right before that because, like I said, I never done wraps before. Self wrapped myself for a little bit, and then showed up to that meet and was like, I'm okay self wrapping. The wraps I had were pretty soft. I think there were some Strong House Project wraps. Not too aggressive. I did this meet in Colorado with my coach at the time, and I had self wrapped the whole prep. Then I got them. Somebody there actually wrapped for me, and I was like, "Oh, this is a game changer. This is so much tighter. I can barely walk." And I was like, I could. And I actually took that as like, okay, if somebody else can wrap for me, I can probably eke out another like 30 or 40 pounds between now and the Kern. And I think I ended up going like, I just squatted 700 at that meet in Colorado, or close to it.
716.
And I think I went,
and then you squatted 733 at the Kern.
So yeah, and I think I missed my third at the Kern. I'm not sure. But yeah, man, that was pretty much the start of getting into wraps, and I didn't hate it. I didn't love it either, but my coach came out and his wife wrapped me for it, and that was a pretty good day. And it actually ended up finishing fourth overall to who got third that year? Jason LeGrand got third overall that year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know what?
And
I
Kern
feel
actually
like
gave some money too.
even though you had a huge breakout performance with a 591 dots, nothing to shit on in any meet. Also, that was when they were using Wilkes, so that's probably what also put you slightly lower. If we were to look again, I'd be curious where you placed. But I just remember that was the meet where Cody Blazik totaled 2K at 181, right, in wraps, which was like a holy shit. Everyone was like, what the hell? You weren't far behind it, you know? But that was just
1920.
Yeah, 1923. That was just such a standout moment that it, like, you know, kind of overshadowed other things. So that was a hell of a year at the Kern. Yuri was there, right? I think that was one of the last times he's come over to the US since to compete.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a hell of a year. That was a hell of a year. So after
that was a good one.
Looking at your history after that, it just became pro powerlifting from there, right? So kind of talking through those years, you've still been active duty, right? Or while still competing at a very high level.
Yeah.
So
I got my work laptop in front of me now.
how have you kind of juggled doing both of those, having a lot of years in the sport, and specifically selecting these meets and being able to make them work?
Man, it's honestly been a kind of a team effort. Both with my wife Bria, she has helped out a lot with, like, you know, getting stuff around the house, helping me get ready for the meets, kind of helping take some of the stress off. And then at work, the last 2 years specifically, I've had a lot of support from my actual leadership team. And a couple of years before that, they were kind of coming around. They didn't really know what powerlifting was until like my last year there. I think when I broke the record at the American Pro, they were kind of not the American Pro, at the Kern, the Kern that I won. They were like, "Whoa, that's pretty big." So that's when they were like, "Oh yeah, we support you and all that." But I didn't really care about all that at the time. Like, you guys didn't even know I was really doing this, but as long as they were gracious with giving me like the time off that I needed, that was fine. The biggest struggle really is just coming home after like a really long day of work and dealing with the stress of that, and then having to go train. Which is like, I had to get a home gym, and, you know, coming home from a long day of work, you know how it is. Like, you got stuff to do. You got, you know, responsibilities, dogs, kids, whatever the case may be. And you got to go in and, like, I still got to get this work in because I got this meet coming up. Or you just need to build a foundation before you even jump into another prep. And that's usually the biggest struggle, is just dealing with like the work stress and then coming back home and trying to get your actual, like, you know, your side gig, or if you want to call it, or your hobby work done at the same time. So that has been the hardest part, especially lately. I got a bigger position now, and it's been wearing me out on the stress side. So but making it work best we can.
For sure,
So
man. So after those, so your history, right? We climb. We go from 165 to 181. Then that Kern was your last meet at 181 before going up
yeah,
to 198. At that point, I'm sure I think with your wrestling background, cutting is bread and butter for you. You probably used to do that for wrestling. You have done that so well over the years. It shows right before you did the Kern, you did a meet at 197. Then you weighed in exactly at 181 for the Kern just 4 months later. So you were cutting for 181, decide to go up to 198, compete at 198 for a while, had like what you said, one of the biggest performances being at the 2021 Kern, right? Because 2020 got canceled.
yeah.
At 198 in wraps. Previously, before that, doing the hybrid showdown raw and totaling over 2K. So, how have you kind of figured out where and when to go up when floating between that 198 mark and then going up to 220 at the first time at the American Pro?
So I guess I'll go back to like my going up to 198. So when I went up to 198, that was an accident. And that was my first time that I needed to move up in weight. I actually, Bria was with me there in Texas for the tribute meet, and I was trying to cut to 181, but I think I was it like 190, 190? I was like in the 190s the night before, but the weight wasn't coming off. I didn't really have the resources to cut the weight. Like I was sitting in a hot car trying to sweat. I'm like, this isn't working. Couldn't find a sauna. Couldn't get any like. I just couldn't get the weight off. So I was like, and I was already in a really bad state. I think when I was flying there, like my chest even cramped up just sitting in the airplane. And I mean, I wasn't that big at the time, but like, if I just move my arm, my chest starts to like shake and I have a spasm. I'm like, all right, I probably don't need to push another 10 pounds of water out. So at that point, I looked at Brittany and she was like, you shouldn't do this. And I was like, the only reason I was cutting to 181, it was going to be my last meet anyway, was to go against, I think, John at 181 for the first time. But good thing I didn't do it. I would have got my ass handed to me more so than I did because I would have cut too much water off. And the refeed would not have been worth it. I probably wouldn't even made it to the meet, honestly. That would have been just severely unhealthy. So looking back on the other times I moved up, it's kind of been I kind of judge it on my weight cuts. Like if the weight cut is still easy, obviously, like right now I'm cutting. Even if I get it to like 230, it's probably just food and just a little water weight that's just kind of lingering. I can cut down to 214, 213, which pretty much minimal effort with like 3 hours in a sauna after a week of water loading. So I'll obviously be at 220 for at least another year or two, and I got room to grow. For 198, I was like, that last time I could have 198, it was rough. So I kind of look at it like I'm gonna take a hit on my dots, but like my health is a little bit more important than trying to keep this weight down. Because if you keep cutting all that weight and you're dying the whole time, every time, over and over and over again, your performance is only going to get worse. You can put 100 pounds in your total in training, but if your weight cut is twice as hard as it was the last time, that 100 pounds is going to turn into maybe a 20-pound PR if you PR at all, and that's if you make weight. So, and all the extra stress is just not worth it. So I kind of prioritize my performance over like, oh, do I want the dots that bad? Like I could have probably cut 3 or 4 more pounds for this past meet that I just did. And if I didn't hurt myself, my leg, I probably could have edged out Shane with even with the Wilkes meet. But like, I didn't know I was gonna hurt myself, so I was like, I probably don't need to do all that. We'll see what we can push out and just have a good battle and have some fun. But it is what it is. So I kind of just push right now. I'm pushing it as much as I can until I'm like, all right, I don't need to do this, and I get out. But yeah, cutting now is like I just judge off how hard the weight cut is, and if I need to move up, I'm moving up. You get the gains back anyway.
For sure. So let's take it to the last like year and a half or so, right? So starting at the American Pro, the first one, you competed 220, first meet at 220. Were you originally going to cut to 198 for that meet, or the plan was 220?
For American Pro?
Yeah, the first one.
The plan was no, the plan was 220. Yeah, the plan was 220 because I had my eye on Yuri's squat record at the time, and the thing was 917 or 914, and that was always the plan to go 220 and take that.
So if people don't know what happened at that meet, second attempt, you broke the all-time record squat. And it was fucking fast, bro. Like that shit was sick. And someone's got to go in and update Open Powerlifting because it said your third attempt was a 953 attempt, but they need to put in what it actually was, right?
Yeah. I was looking at that. I was like, this ain't right.
Which was a misload of 1,000 something, right?
Yeah.
So would you say previously, historically, before that, you had that back injury from years and years back? But in any of these competitions, for the most part, it seemed like it was kind of small tweaks and you were okay. But was that like that squat injury with that 1,000-pound squat? Because I know that affected you quite a bit. Is that or did that start to snowball some of these other issues that you've had recently that you've been dealing with?
No, not, at least not for this past year. I don't think so. I know at the meet it definitely impacted me pretty bad. And then I'm an idiot, and I was like, well, they misloaded me. Let me go retake the right weight once I found out, because I was like, if I get it, that's more weight, that's more pounds on my total. And I thought I could do it because 925 was, you said it was fast, but like I didn't unrack it right. I felt the pick was terrible, but I was like, I also felt the weight on my back and like, okay, I can muscle this up and I'll just rest up and I'll come back on the third and I can still push the weight up. And I picked the 1,003 was perfect. I couldn't even tell it was misloaded by 100 pounds until I got about 3/4 of the way down, obviously, and then I folded like a lawn chair. But I don't think that injury specifically affected any more recent injuries. No, it did mess my mental a little bit, but that's about it.
For sure. For sure. So going from there into that meet, hopping from the American Pro to the Pro Raw, going back in sleeves, Power Surge back in sleeves, been in sleeves back and forth, going into the American Pro 2. So let's talk about these recent meets that you've done. American Pro 2, the meet you just did this past weekend. Talk to me how those preps were, how you felt going into them, what happened at the meets. Yeah.
Let's see. So for American Pro, obviously if we back up to was it January? Don't call my foot. Get off me. We go back to January and I had the bilateral quad tears. I was actually training for Ghost. I had to pull out of that because I ended up in the hospital for like 5-6 days. And I spent like 3 or 4 months trying to recover from that, get my strength back up. I did a small local meet here here in Fort Walton, and I kind of put everything back a little bit. I was like, okay, we're gonna still do the American Pro. And the weird thing is, when I started prepping for the American Pro, I figured if I start longer with my prep and reps, that'll give me a bigger, more time to practice. I'll get my swing back a little bit better. In hindsight, I think that was a bad idea because previously all my rep meets that I've done, literally all of them, I've had, I think at most 4 weeks in reps, except for the American Pro 2. I had something that prevented me from doing more time reps. Either it was another meet I was doing in sleeves prior to that, or something else. So this past one, I did, I think, 12 weeks in reps. It was the worst 12-week rep prep. Well, only 12-week rep prep. It was the worst rep prep I've ever done. I was falling out of the mono. I couldn't find my width that I wanted. I actually had to bring my width in because 12 weeks of doing reps with my wide stance that I squat in reps actually destroyed my hips. So a couple of weeks I had to just either not deadlift or I had to not squat because I definitely couldn't deadlift for like 2 weeks because my hips were destroyed because I was doing a lot more volume with the deadlifts too. So I think the combination of that, the long prep and the reps with 800-900 pounds scaling up over the weeks, and then doing 600-700 pound deadlifts with also a wide stance like that it killed me. So I actually had to bring my stance in about 2 inches. So it kind of changed my squat a little bit. So I don't know if anybody noticed, but if you look at last year's American Pro and look at this year's American Pro, I'm, to me at least, considerably more narrow in my stance. Still considerably wider than I am in sleeves, but so the prep was just, it was not good. bench went well. It didn't show in the meet after I tore my quad at the meet, but there was a lack of leg drive there. But yeah, it was just not a good prep. Like the whole thing it was a train wreck.
Well, I could see, knowing how I've coached lifters in wraps and some of them being able to handle longer periods of times in wraps. When you're a near 1,000-pound squatter, that amount of overload and that amount of loading on your back, knowing that the wraps add a lot, but just to your central nervous system, it's shocking and it's definitely hard to maintain. And you're relatively a very strong raw squatter as well. But I could see how going the route of prepping mainly raw and then just greasing your groove there at the end, knowing what you're going to get out of the wraps and out of a taper and a peak with a fresher body would be better. So yeah, I can see that. But I mean, it's all about the learning lessons as well, right? You're still young in the sport, still plenty of time. It's all about gathering that data, taking that data, seeing where it's worked and where it hasn't, and then putting it all together. So with that, you still opened 400-kilo squat, hit a 400-kilo squat, attempted to break your own all-time world record, and still had a good day. Still won best overall in reps, right? So
yeah.
Then turn it around, jump straight into this next meet, right? This past weekend.
Yeah. So the idea for that was, like I said, I did that meet, I think in May in sleeves, right after I had the quad tear. And I think I squatted like 771, and I was really happy with that because that was a PR at the time. I've been an 800-pound raw squatter for like 2 years. I just hadn't put it on the platform yet. So like, I think my PR at the time before that meet was 750 or 755, and then I came out of an injury, a pretty bad injury. It hit 771. I was like, okay, we're on the right track. Still not quite 800, but this is good after an injury 3 months ago. So my idea was I can do another wrap sleeve meet. A few weeks, 6 weeks after the American Pro. I had some good overload time in. I can take a week off, kind of see where I'm at, push the peak in sleeves. Should be an easy transition. CNS should be firing pretty hard, and I can still give it a little break. So I signed up for the meet, I think like a month and a half or so before we even went to the American Pro. Down here in Port Charlotte, so it was only like 7 hours from us. To me, it was like a no-brainer. I'm like, okay, I can knock this out. Shouldn't be too strenuous, and possibly win some money. I think prize was like $5,000, and I get to compete with Shane. And I thought that would be fun anyway. So we rode into it, but obviously I didn't know I was gonna have another quad strain leaving out of the American Pro. So I took 2 weeks of just kind of rest recovery for the quad, which I couldn't really bench well either. I think the most I benched prior to the meet was like 485, just kind of keep around like 90%. To stay peaked a little bit. Deadlifting was also out of the question for a little while. I think the heaviest I deadlifted prior to that meet was like 705 or 716. So all things considered, the prep for that was almost non-existent rolling into it. So I can't really be too upset with the results because it was still a great result. I went in there after the quad injury. I hit, I think, 635 3 weeks after the meet. 716 or something like that, and then 782 the following week, and that was the extent of my peak for that meet. Then I went there and managed to hit 804, which is the goal I've been trying to hit for obviously like a year and a half, 2 years now. I sacrificed my leg for it, and I knew that after my opener because I actually felt the quad strain a little bit on the opener squat, and I went to the table and it was like, I had my wife with me, Bria, and I was like, this is going to be my last squat. This is going to be it. And she was like, okay, you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to load up 804. And if we get it, we're still in it a little bit. If not, I'm definitely not in the running for overall, but we'll just see what we can put together on the day. The idea for that squat was to kind of hit the hole with little resistance, so I wouldn't tweak the leg too much on the eccentric portion by trying to fight the weight. Hit the hole, kind of dive bombed it a little bit, and fought for my life on the way up. Had like a couple
Yeah,
tears
you
coming
did.
down.
Yeah, you
But
did.
when I got those white lights, I was like, I'm good, man. I just limped my way to the back and was like, get this sleeve off me and give me some Aleve or something because this is gonna hurt. So wrapped it up with some ice, and yeah, that was how squats went. Bench was okay this meet, but missed my third. I think I damaged the leg a little bit more, at least a little differently. I didn't have a lot of leg drive from my left leg on bench, so the third bench just was not. It was not coming up after that. After about halfway up, and then deadlifts was a. I don't really know what happened there. Obviously, I know the leg was jacked up, so I had to kind of throw a sleeve on my leg to kind of compress it a little bit so I could still manage to pull, which is the same thing I did at the pro. So the idea was like if I just pull the same way, I kind of know what pain I'm in for. And the sacrifice there was at the weight was a little further in front of me. So I had to kind of fight it back, which got me on my opener because the bar whipped on me a little bit. And I got hit up with a downward motion. So I retook my opener to be safe because like I'm not trying to lose my squat just for an extra few pounds. At least I walk out with an 804 squat and have it official. So stayed there, retook 750 and smoked it just fine. It was a lot cleaner. Then the 804 was the second. Well, it was my third. It was the planned second. And we were pulling it pretty good. It was still way in front of me. Like it got away from me a little bit more than I wanted it to. Managed to lean back with it and got it locked out. But right at lockout, there's like a muscle right here that attaches to your like sternum and then also to your clavicle all the way to like right here. And I felt a pop, and my arm just kind of like I actually felt it drop a little bit, and I just like instinctively just kind of threw the weight back in front of me, and then my lights went out for a second, and I don't know if there was like a body's fight or flight response to like shut down to like keep me safe or something, but after that I was like I tried to reach for my shoulder, my neck, but everybody thought I was reaching for my chest, so they all thought I was having a heart attack. Sorry for everybody who got hurt. My wife thought I was having a heart attack. The spotter, David, thought I was having a heart attack too. I'm like, I'm good. My arm's too short and I can't actually reach up here when I'm leaning. But turns out I got a doctor's appointment tomorrow, so I don't know what the actual diagnosis is, but I'm pretty sure I strained these two muscles pretty bad. I don't think they're torn because I don't have any like fully torn. I don't have any bruising. I don't have any bruising on my leg either. So, but the whole left side of my body got wrecked pretty good at that meet. So
What
we
did
had a
you
good time.
What did you end up totaling?
Let's see. I went, I think 2055. So about 5 kilos under my current best.
And that if you would have hit that deadlift, it would have been over 2100 in sleeves then?
Yeah, it would have been 2100.
Nice.
Which was the goal minimum. So I'm like, okay, I got 2 squats, I got 1 deadlift and 2 benches. So for 5 for 9, I got a bum leg, I got a jacked up arm and neck. So 2055 with 1 leg I'm not too pissed about it. So
and 20,
I'm pissed, I'm hurt.
21 pretty much being there when you're not healthy in sleeves is huge. And even while battling all these things, it's like that's proof that years and years in the sport, you've still been able to climb up the ranks and take these learning lessons and know how to adjust and know what you need to implement the next time around, right? So I'm assuming it's safe to say going to have a pretty long off season before you come back, right? So what are the next goals? What is the next possible plan?
Honestly, so my eyes are kind of set on the 220 sleeve record. My boy Joe has it right now at I think 849. I'm not gonna chip it because I don't want to disrespect his record. I'm gonna break it by a whole 2.5 keys because I'm a man. I hope he hears this. Uh, uh, so yeah, the plan is to go for that. Probably 854. So I'll be working towards that pretty much my off season after rehab and kind of getting some volume in. I need to get as healthy as possible. I want to actually finally get a 551 bench. So I'm going to go back to upping my bench frequency a little bit. And also I want to learn how to deadlift. I haven't hit a deadlift PR since the Kern. I haven't pulled 804 since the Kern. And obviously I have the strength to pull it. I've pulled it a few times. I just haven't done it in the meet. And again, since the Kern. So I'm like, if I can actually get some confidence in my deadlift and stop opening with 720 and 750 and just open with like 770 and or 804 and get it out of the way, and I'll actually add some weight to my total. So I know I have the capacity to total over 2,200. I just need to be healthy, and that's in sleeves. I know in reps I can probably total 2,350 on a healthy day with a good prep. So those are probably going to be my goals for next year. I'm just going to jump right over 2,100, shoot for the 1,000 kilos in sleeves, and shoot for Yuri's record again in reps. Hopefully, I'm not going to rely on my squat too much because in the past it's kind of been my thing. It's like, oh, you're a squat guy, just squat half the total and you'll be fine. But I need to stop relying on my one trick and actually build my lifts that haven't been moving. Because a lot of us, we all get tunnel vision, and I can recognize that, oh, your squat's going up, but damn, you haven't benched a PR in 2 years. You haven't deadlifted a PR in 3 years. Maybe there's a problem here. So I'm actually focused on those things in the off season. Probably add a little bit of actually lean size, not just eat PB&Js all day and cereal. So I'm gonna try to dial those things in. Try to actually make it so that my cut is harder, but because I put on muscle and actually just cut to like 218, 219 instead of being able to cut down to 213, 214. So those are my goals for improvement. I don't have any meets planned for next year yet. I'm planning on doing the cage. That won't be a meet, and I will not be 220. I will be a full body, full of water boy at whatever event I'm doing. So the recovery will be focused on that. I'll be doing a lot of volume, so whatever I do there will probably be for reps. So my goal right now is focused on getting healthy for just that event. I'm not going to push it too crazy, and I'll look for a meet later in the year. Probably going to be American Pro 3 is one. I might do this meet we just did here again too. So I mean, it's a nice local level meet that that they put on. So I'll definitely look into doing that again. Maybe I can go against Shane and see if I can beat him at his own Wilkes game this next time.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
Well,
that's the plan.
If you guys listening don't know what Chad's referring to when he talks about the cage, y'all are young, first of all. But the animal cage at the Arnold, right? So that's coming up in March. You got about 3 months, 3.5 months, something like that till then.
Yeah.
The animal cage, they don't usually announce the events till closer to it, but historically they've had all-time world record powerlifters, all the best in the world doing some kind of exhibition lift, whether that's like, Chad might go for 700 pounds, 800 pounds for reps on squat or whatever that might be. So that'll be really cool to see. It's really cool that they're bringing it back because it's been hell. I think the last animal cage wasn't since 2019. So this will be the first one in fucking 5 years. It's nuts. It's nuts how quickly time goes by, man. So that'll be exciting to see. Stay tuned for that, guys. If you're going to be there at the Arnold, you don't want to miss that. American Pro 3 is a no-brainer that gives you tons and tons of time to kind of build until then. And like you said, Jordan Wong, he's crushing it down here in Southwest Florida with what he's doing. That's my boy. So super cool to see. Dude, thanks for hopping on, man. Thanks for telling us your story. Thanks for telling us about these recent meets and what might be next. Sign us out. Let everyone know where they can they can find you and where they can read the infamous Penson Q&As.
So you can find me on Instagram at King Penson Lifts. And shout out to all my sponsors, Amino Asylum, Iron Rebel, where I'm now, Live Large, Reach Supplements, Zone Smell Salts. If you want to use my code, it's just my last name. I make it easy for everybody. Penson, Penson.
Hell yeah. Check out Chad on Instagram. I believe he has most of those sponsors in his bio as well. Thank you, all of our listeners, and I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the WRPF podcast.